Hello fellow YouTubers, I'm creating this video basically for myself since this is the second, well this will be the third time I'll be replacing the pump for this washer combo set. So instead of scrounging around for videos that are partially to do with my washer dryer combo, I'll just make one for myself and hopefully it helps someone else. To find the model number, open the door, look here, and when it gets into focus, you can see that the model number is WM39997HWA. Bought this in 2018 when I remodeled the house, thinking that the technology was going to be awesome to wash, dry, come home, and have a perfect set of clothes. This thing has been far from great, and I already created a video for replacing parts on this LG Sidekick, which sounded like a great idea since they wanted so much for the pedestals for it anyways. I figured why not just get the washer, and actually it's been coming in handy because I bought a dryer to help facilitate washing with this combo set, because this takes like 5-6 hours sometimes to do a load. So I can wash a little load in here or here, throw it in the dryer and dry in here. This unit broke, so for the last week until I got the parts, I've been washing small loads out of the Sidekick and using a standard old school front loading dryer, and I'm definitely going back to just basic technology that's tried and true. So to get started here, I think I'll put this on a tripod and move on from there. Okay, these are the parts that you're going to need to do surgery on your washer dryer combo. You're going to need a Phillips screwdriver. You're going to need a common or flathead screwdriver, needle nose pliers, a Sharpie, a flashlight. I like to use a container with a lid so that I can put all the screws and miscellaneous parts in there and not lose them halfway through a project. You need a shallow bowl to drain the water out of your tub. I also like to have a towel to sop up any water that's spilled, and I also like to use a bath mat so I have something to kneel on when I'm working. The first step in working on this washer is to start draining the excess water that's stuck inside the washing machine. And you'll see from the video, I pinch the hose and apply the plug to stop the water so that it doesn't spill all over the place in between taking the bowl out from under the machine and back and forth. Okay, so this water smells pretty foul since I forgot to drain it between ordering the pump and the pump delivering. Amazon used to deliver in like 2 days, but now after COVID, they're pretty lazy, and so everything takes like a week. I'll plug this back up so any residual water doesn't leak all over the place. I guess that's another nice thing about the bath mat. You can not have that stinky, disgusting water drop onto the ground. If you're lucky, you can counterclockwise spin this guy, and this would be your problem. I was able to get like 2 loads with cleaning this before it died. You can see there's a little bit of lint here from whatever washes, but definitely not enough to warrant a failure with this machine. So that's definitely not the problem, but we know it's clean now, which is good. And we can put that in our handy dandy container. Next thing is to remove the 2 screws that are right here, and just remove this. Take your little thing, throw it in your cubby so you don't lose that. Now you got this guy loose, remove that, and now we're good for this section. Step 2, take out this tray. If you press this little button here, it will disengage this tray. Go ahead and set it to the side. We'll be setting this over here. On the back of the washer, there are 2 plastic tabs, one here and one on the other side, and you need to remove this screw from each side to be able to remove this top panel, and that is the next step. With the screws removed on the back, you can just push this backwards, and you can see that these are retained on there. No use in taking the other screw off, so you have to lose more screws and more parts. And you can just set this back 6-8 inches back so you have somewhere to work. After pushing this top piece off, you will remove this screw right here. I backed it off so you can see it a little bit easier. Then there is 1 tab, 2 tabs, 3 tabs that will also hold this front face on, and a screw here and screw here. I'll take those off and we'll go to the next step. Now that I've removed that screw, the screw that was holding this in over here, and these 3 clips that were holding the front face on, just wiggle it a little bit and it'll pop off, and then just place the top on. I'm kind of working my way from the top down instead of going back and forth. I marked these screws from last time, so remove those 5-6 screws, and then we'll work our way down to the next step. Now that I have the 6 screws removed from the various points of the front of the face here, I will work my way down the washer to the rest of it, but I figured I'd give you a couple pointers. One is maybe use a permanent marker and mark the points where you're putting screws in, so you don't have to reference back or try and guess. Another one is to take a picture of the size of the screw and the shape of the screw, so you're not fumbling around looking in the bucket of goodies and trying to figure out which size goes where. Those have been super helpful for me in the past, so that I don't have to go back and try and guess or have the notorious extra screw or 2 that you have no idea where it goes to. Alright, now that we've gotten that done and this is loose, we'll leave that like so. At the bottom of this drum there is this rubber seal here which keeps the water from pouring out of the washer dryer combo, is a metal band, and there is a spring right here. And let me see if I can do this with one hand. This goes like so, and you can see that this guy just comes off real easy and has a spring to compress and hold this rubber seal tight where it belongs. The whole object of this part is to remove the locking mechanism wiring from the front face of the washer. Okay, now that you've detached the clip from here, you're going to push back the seal all the way around, and that will release the door. Make sure you have a hand on this front face so it doesn't fall, and then close the door. And I left a screw in here just so that it didn't fall while I was videotaping, but then this face will come off and you can set it aside. With the face off, I can show you a little bit better the clip that we were reaching at when the door was there. And then this is the clip, and here is a little active button you have to press, which raises and lowers the clip lock. I'll take a photo of that. Alright, we're finally to the exciting part. We're finally getting into the guts of this washer dryer combo, and I know the washers are the same, so this video will work for those also. You'll see a blue mark on this one. That is the cold. That'll go into the front. You'll see a red mark right here. That's the hot water. So this is where the needle nose pliers come in handy. You just pinch and twist a little bit, and then just raise them up a little bit here so that you don't have to take them off. That way they're in place and you don't have to look for them in your bin of goodies. Same thing with the back one, and you can just move your hoses aside, work your way backwards. When you're placing these clamps again, I'm just gonna do the reverse and make sure they're set all the way, and I like to make sure that these clamps are accessible for the next time you got to replace the pump. Hopefully never, but we'll see here. Once again, here's this guy. I'm able to do all this one-handed, and then now we're to the big back one. If you haven't already, there's screws right here mounting this pump in place, but you should have already. So now we have those, and now the next thing to look at is the wiring here. Make note, there's a black wire, a blue wire. There should be a mark on this black tab here showing that that's the black wire, and also a mark on the case showing where the black wire goes. If not, make yourself a nice easy wire mark cheat sheet. Also note any other marks that might be visible, like this little red mark where a screw's at, little red mark here where there's another screw. This may or may not be anything to do with yours, but make any notes to that. There's also a black and brown wire there. If you have a different model or whatnot, just make sure you have photos showing where those wires go. Alright, so I didn't realize that we actually have 3 of these guys holding this motor and pump assembly down, which I didn't write my notes from last time, so that's something extra that's has some mounting. So now that these are loose, you can see the black wire that's with the brown wire. Unhook it from here, unhook, unhook, and you can see this is marked with black felt tip. If it isn't, then please do that yourself. On this side, you can see that this guy is marked with a black felt tip and blue. Now this assembly can come out. You can inspect it a little further. Here we go. Detach the drain hose. Actually, here we go. Don't have to. Just comes out with it. I'm going to drain out the last of the water and then move forward. Okay, so here's the pump and motor assembly out of the machine. You'll notice, take note, the direction of this whole assembly is kind of facing this direction, and that'll help position it for later. When I look here, you'll see that this shroud and pump is held on by 1, 2, 3 screws. It's also kind of locked in by this bottom plate here. So I'm going to have to take this bottom plate off first before I can get to the motor to get it out, which is a screw here and another screw there. These are the shape and size of screws that go out of here. So we can set those aside. Finish working on this guy. Oh, 2 more screws. This guy's secured on there good. Now we can finally remove this plate with the 4 screws. These are the screws. They're kind of like a galvanized. Guys there. I don't see any jamming or anything. This cover will just come off. I don't really feel anything excessively wrong with it, but I guess they just die because they're cheap. There was the model number of the one that I had. It was a one of the cheapest ones I could find on Amazon. This time I purchased this PartsBroz. The box is all oily, so hopefully this one isn't ruined. Looks very similar. Tabs look a little different, but pretty darn similar. The reason why I purchased this one versus other one was this one has a lifetime guarantee, so if I end up needing to replace it again, then at least I'm not buying this part. Before installing this, I've taken a moment to kind of examine the two and compare and contrast the differences that I see. The first primary one is the bolt pattern. They're the same, so I'm not going to have any problems with them bolting in. The second is, not sure if you can see, but the tabs here, these have a much thicker tab than the other. Shouldn't make any difference because it's just holding it in place. This one has a slightly beveled tab, and this one has a straight tab. Shouldn't be that big of a deal. A little concern to me is all this machine oil here that's on this. Hopefully there's not any parts that are supposed to be sealed bearings or something like that, and that would be an indicator that the seals are broken on that. Another thing that I notice is this little spindle back here is a little bit longer than this one here. Another thing I noticed is that these little transformer grooves are a lot finer on this one than this one, which usually indicates a better quality of an item. The damage I did notice though is this little protector tab here is broken, but shouldn't have any functional issues. So other than that, these guys spin pretty similar. This one spins maybe a little bit easier than this one, so they both seem to spin the same angles. Oh, actually this one has, see how this one like spins and stops, spins and stops. This one doesn't really spin and stop, it just kind of spins. So there's something going on there where I don't feel that resistance between each of the magnet points. Usually like a super high grade motor wouldn't have this stop and spin because that's the spacing between the magnets, but I think since these are super cheapies, that's just something going on with the internal part that's not okay. Now to start working backwards, we've taken this thing all apart, we've examined your pump for functionality. If you've forgotten where to screw these screws in and you don't have marks or forgot to mark them, you can see there's threading where this has screwed into previously versus a square one that hasn't been screwed into. There's a red mark close to it. They had an off mark, but this one marks that one. As I had mentioned before, this is going to be at this angle, but since this was the last step we did, we will put the shroud back on first. place this back in position. Since this is the most important part, I would screw in all the screws about halfway and then slowly tighten them all together versus all torqued once. That'll help make sure that your seal, that rubber seal that's on here, is seated properly. That's like the major thing. You don't want to have to take this whole thing apart because the seal got kinked or something like that, or didn't get seated properly. So just making sure that everything's nice and tight on there, and that this is where a fingernail has a problem trying to get in there. That'll enable or ensure that you won't have a problem with that O-ring not being seated properly and it leaking water. Maybe even give it a little push. Make sure and clean out whatever random debris you have left in there. I used a little cotton swab and kind of swabbed a lot of little spots and stuff, since this thing has such a problem. May as well clean it before you put it back. So now I've put all the screws in on the base. Just another little pointer. I always put all my screws in, just this one right here, this one, this one, this one, and I put them all in, and then I tighten them a bit, and then I'll go back just to make sure that everything's seated properly. That's saved me multiple times on not binding up on putting various items together. So just figured I'd give you that little pointer. Seems a little redundant, but once you can realize that it's seated properly, then you don't have to go back and forth, but it definitely is helpful. Okay, I've put this pump and drain assembly in place. Before I did, I plugged these wires in. I also marked on here black and brown so that I don't have to forget or wonder next time because it wasn't marked. And I fed this hose back through and make sure it's kind of in place to where it needs to be, out of the way. Then the next step is I will be putting these bolts back in. Since that was one of the last steps, it'll be one of the first steps. Alright, now that the 3 bolts in, mounting this assembly is in, I'm going to work my way from the back forward and start with this clamp. Now that the back one's on, I'm going to do this one. Work my way forward. Red one goes on to the back. Next, connect your cord, your power supplies, motors, black in the front, blue in the back. Next, we're going to be putting on the face of the washer dryer combo, and there are 2 little tabs right here that the front are going to be seated on right here. Grab one temporary screw just to hold the face on. You don't have to screw it in all the way, but just enough to hold the front on so you don't have to use your hands. Open up the washer dryer, pull this back outwards a little bit, kind of put it in position. Then you're going to reconnect the wire back here. Now that the switch is reconnected inside here, do all the rest of these 6 screws. There's a little button on the side here that helps seat this flush, and once it's flush, like I said before, screw all of them in mostly, but not all the way, and then you can work your way back and forth to tighten them so that this seats where it belongs rather than where you're forcing it to go. Here's a close-up of the seal. I've put all of it back in except for this one spot here, just for the purpose of this video. This will hook over this little lip here and tuck nice and neatly over, and you can see how it's seated nice and tightly back there, which enables it to accept that metal band again and hold on to that metal piece. Basically, that metal band is going to be sitting right under here, but in this groove. On that little lip, but right there. Okay, now for the most obnoxious part of this whole process, and that's getting this metal band back around this rubber seal here. This is going to seat in this little indentation down here. I'll zoom in so you can see it. Right there. And this is going to seat just like so. I would start from one side and set it in there like that so it's tucked in there, and work your way all the way around the drum in a, for me, I'm going to work in a circular fashion like so, and I'll zoom out. Seat this in there. Make sure it's nice and tight. Bring it around. If it pops back up, just start back over. Get that rubber seal to be placed in the right spot. Set that in there like so. And then use your common and follow this around as if it's like a bicycle tire. Make sure you don't puncture the rubber while doing it. It's better to take your time and do this right than it is to rush it and ruin this. I don't know how much it would cost to replace the little rubber. There we go. In there, give it a nice tug. Make sure it's not coming out, because if it comes out, then you obviously did it wrong. And if you did it wrong, it'll also be leaking water. So there we go. All right, while we're at the bottom of the washer, let's reinstall the trap. Feed this through this hole here. Put that roughly where it belongs. You can back feed that hose. Then mine came with white face screws to fancy, make the front look fancy. Screw in that screw here. Another one up here. And we're done with this area. All right, we're at the home stretch of finishing this washer, which is exciting since I haven't been able to wash clothes in this washer for over a week and a half. Place this back into its seated position. Put your two screws right up here. Okay. All seated properly. Finish. Drive this guy home. Drive this guy home. Back here. And we're good. Now, back to putting the screw in here and putting this lid back on. So there's the screw that got screwed in. Confirm that you are clipped back into these 3 points, and then what we can do is reinstall the tray. Press your button down, close it, the lid seated properly back on, reinstall your last 2 screws and plug the bad boy back in. I hope you found this video helpful, and just as a final note, I decided to add some bleach to the system and do a tub clean to make sure and get all that funky smell out of the tub.